Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. We're going to try and make your computer infrastructure a lot stronger in terms of cybersecurity. Now, last time we got together with him, we looked at the consumer side, the individual side of making things more secure in your life, passwords and such. Now we're going to look at the business side, and that's his specialty, if you will, especially with healthcare organizations, making things a lot easier, but also more secure. His company is Business Automation Experts, and he's back with us. Matt Lepkowski joins us on the program. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Hi, Steve. How you doing?
Good, good. So where do you want to start with this when it comes to cybersecurity in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we'll talk a little bit about employees, since I think there's a few more of the employees than there are the manager side. And a key thing I would say is you are the front line, right? Pretty much all of the things you read about or the things that we've talked about, basically they became a problem because it was a failing of the human, right? And it's usually an employee, not necessarily a higher up person, but a lot of times it'll be the person. And so knowing that you are critical to this and that there is an active group of people out there that are trying to target you and manipulate you, I think you just need to know that and obviously have that in the back of your mind. And so people are going to be looking for you, right? You got LinkedIn, we've got Facebook, we've got all kinds of things to find out more about you. And that information is power, and people will use that against you. And if they see you are, a politician, or you run this company, or you do this or that, you now have a target on you.
Now, you enlightened us last time we got together. Maybe it was time before that. And it was a surprise for me. I can't remember the organization that was breached, but it was Healthcare Connected. Which one was that?
I think Change Healthcare, probably.
Yeah.
Connected to United. Yeah.
I had no idea and this affected millions of people and businesses. There you go. Many of us don't realize what actually went down there, but the hackers wanted money to give our information back to the healthcare organizations, and they did it. They gave them that money.
Yeah, 22 million. That was more to just turn their systems back on. So the real story of how it failed hasn't really come out, but I guarantee it was through some set of employees. There's probably more than one. And a key thing that I would, like people do these phishing campaigns, right? So there's phishing, there's smishing, there's whatever ishing. And people are actively looking to see, well, I got his cell phone. Let me send him a text. Let me see if I can get him to do this, right? Let me see if I can get him to click this. Phones aren't that secure. And email is a very common one. Like over 90% of everything that ever goes down, it actually came through email. That's why there's a lot of effort around the email system, because it is a key source of risk. And if you are an employee and something smells bad, all of a sudden you get an email from your boss, right? And he wants you to do something that's like, why am I going to go unlock this, right? Why am I going to go into a bank and do this? You call that person and try to talk to them directly, right? Like get on a Zoom call, go meet into their office, do something face to face, because if it smells wrong, it's probably wrong. And you need to be cautious of those things. A lot of things I've heard about and brought into were basically somebody got in, like they were in the email system and they were watching the traffic, right? And so they figured out that, these types of messages usually go around. And then they inserted something and got the person to do something that, they normally probably wouldn't have done. Like, oh, I need you to install this program because we're doing this initiative. And so they find out who the email is for an IT person, and then they kind of make it look like that person, right? And if it is email, you always have to look at not just the name, but try and look at the email. Because if it came from AOL, but it's a Gmail address. It's like your email, just delete it. Just don't even bother.
Yep.
It's definitely wrong. And what they'll do is they'll send something from a Gmail and it'll just have the name, and be like somebody would send something on behalf of me and to a person. Like it did happen to me. Like there's a guy that I work with and somebody sent me an email and like it said that it came from that person, right? But the email was not that person's email.
Yep.
And so they knew that I had this relationship with this person and they're like, hey, Matt, I need you to change my bank information. I'm like, no, you don't. And so I just called the person like, hey, here we are in this industry and we actually got hit, or the attempt was made. So the employees, super, super important, understand your value to the organization. And, you can negotiate with that information too, but we all have a responsibility. I think you like what I do, you like what you do, I like what I do. I kind of want to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't take much. That's the really unfortunate part of this. You can do something somewhat innocuous or think like, well, what does it matter, right? And it matters.
What's interesting is they get crafty. Like you said that, to create a Gmail address, and many times you can't read the full address. So the beginning of it could be, Matt L at Matt L and, business automation, but the rest of it is 482372121 at gmail.com. We don't see the entire email address, so it looks legit. And I get them all the time. I got the latest one for me is a payment that was submitted to ACH, like direct
Right.
deposit in an account. There's an attachment to it and it
Oh,
looks
yeah.
real. And I have a marketing company, so I have some clients that pay that way. So when I first see it, I'm like, oh, okay, they submitted. I'm like, wait, no, that's not them. So I don't even touch it. I hit the delete button, but they're getting more crafty in getting us to, click.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is the challenge, right? So I'm in Who's Who in America kind of thing. I got that in 2020. And so when they interview me, right? They ask all these questions and other things. And my daughter was going through the book yesterday and like, well, you don't say what our names are. Like, you're under 18. I'm not putting you out there. Like, this is a searchable database and it's
Mm.
very connected to me. I don't want them knowing
Yeah,
this type of information. Um,
that's a
think
great
about
that's a great
those types of
point.
risks.
That's a great point because the more information you give, and we're not even talking about necessarily social security numbers or even
Right.
anything really sensitive. But once you start putting other pieces of information out, let's say there's a bio on you
Mhm.
and goes in a little bit of detail. Matt likes to grill steaks and drink craft beer and spend time with his family, and the
Mhm.
actual kids' names are listed. That gives them one more layer of searchability to find more out about you. And then you take other pieces. Oh, he lives in, Gainesville, Arkansas. And then, oh, I got another piece of information. So
Mhm.
yeah, to your point, don't give it up unless you need to.
Yeah. So if we transition a bit into the employer side of
Mm,
it, one thing that a lot of employers are doing that we usually recommend is you don't put out the org chart, right? It's not, you don't even have it. People just kind of have to know. And so it kind of stinks because you're like, oh, who does so-and-so work for? Like you spend some time there, but it's such a succinct way to devastate an organization
mm,
that, like you don't do it. And if you're gonna, you probably, I mean, you got to have it in HR, right? But it's not on a website. It's not. And then even if you have a company website, you maybe will have to have the top people, right? So like I'm there, but other people are not, right? Because
mm.
I want them to be exposed. Like the stuff that we do, yeah, obviously people are going to be looking. So it's not necessarily it's a concern for me. I know what I'm dealing with, but I don't want to create risk for my employees or companies that I work with or other things.
Sure.
So like I'm not necessarily going to put out there, here's all my customers, so that you can try and invent something and say, hey, Matt thinks
Yeah,
that you
that's a
should do this.
really good point. And I didn't even think about that because many times companies like to tout that, these, a lot of times they don't, they'll say, these are our partners. It's their clients, but it just sounds really cool. And then you start listing them. So now, let's say you worked with the ABC widget company, somebody that looking a little deeper into it can send you an email from what looks like the ABC widget company. Oh, yeah, I'm working with them. Yeah, click, and there you go. Wow.
Yeah, a big so if we go back to like the Change Healthcare, I think it was probably a vendor. So there's a big thing with third party risk, right? So you got all these people. What we do is hard. Even if you take healthcare, we don't get to choose our customers, and most of our customers don't want to be our customer, right? Like you don't wake up and be like, yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to go to this hospital today. Um, you don't have that kind of control in healthcare, so you have to be a little more cautious because you got vendors, you got employees, you got this company coming in, you got your customer, your person's coming in here that needs help, and you don't know that much about them and what they're bringing in, and they do a lot of things to think about those risks. So they will segment their networks and they will do stuff to try and, like if the patient came in and he had some kind of bad program, it's not going to jump into other areas. But, those systems are usually open
Yeah.
because if you're laying in a bed for days on end, you don't necessarily want to watch the TV. So they
Mm.
have unique things that they think about, and that's really the management side of it. Is you really have to be informed about risk, and a lot of these guys are, but they don't necessarily score risk properly. So folks have had ransomware on the list, like it's not really unknown. They never score the likelihood high enough to make a difference, right? Because if they score it high, now they got a problem. Oh geez, it's a really big problem. Now where's the budget? Well, what are we doing about this? And so they kind of undercount that a lot. And I don't recommend that. Like, look, you can just open a couple websites and say, who's reached in New Jersey. Guarantee there's four, and you don't have to do it nationally. You can just
Right.
find neighbors, and it's bad out there. So be informed, and then you got to know that there's a lot of legislation coming. There's a lot that's already
Really?
out there.
Wow.
Yeah. So even if you take uh the SEC, right? Like, so there's a bazillion organizations that you didn't even know you were going to have to deal with, right? So I don't know if you got, because you said you have a company, right?
Hmm.
And did you get the thing from your CPA that says you have to do the beneficial ownership interest thing, the BOI?
Yes.
Yeah, and you have to. Like, you have to. It's from the IRS.
January 25. It's got to be submitted. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, finally they kind of let you know. But were you reading news? Like, did you see this anywhere? Like, you go to Google, do they put something up there like, yeah, you got to fill this out now because they changed a rule.
Wow.
Um, you need to actually think about who's connected to me from a legislative perspective and maybe who isn't, because you will find rules that come from weird places.
Yeah.
So if you take PCI, right? PCI DSS, that's not even a government agency. That's banks. Banks said, look, Target screwed us so bad that we're just going to create rules, right? And now you got to deal with that. So they created their own pseudo government thing that says if you want to take a credit card, here's the rules. And
Hmm.
that this in several places. So it's not even just, the banks now create rules, and then you got your state agencies, then you got your federal agencies. And then if you do anything international, you got other stuff. But you got to know. And one thing that happens for hospitals is we actually have the best healthcare in the planet, right? So we get people from Europe that come here. GDPR applies because it's tied to the individual, it's tied to the citizen. So, yeah, with GDPR, like, why do I have to care? You have to care. Like, if you're treating these people, it's your problem. And you have to look at the overlap and things that are out there
Wow.
because a lot of the things that they ask for are common, but there are nuances and they change. And that's what stinks.
You know, thank you for the reminder on whatever that's called, the disclosure.
The
Uh,
BOI, yeah,
yeah, because I
benefit
had
one.
it, it was like a month and a half, two ago. I took a thumbtack, put it up, and I was like, let me circle back to that. I'll get to that. But got to get to that because there's a penalty involved if you
There is.
don't. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you file the taxes for your company and the BOI is not listed, like you're going to get a different letter from the IRS than that one you like. And so they passed that
Wow.
rule a while ago. I don't even remember when they did, but now it's here. And so
Yeah.
there's things that, we get hit by stuff like, well, when did they make this up? Like
Yeah.
you actually got to pay attention.
Yes. And when I saw it, I'm like, I gotta file another thing.
Yeah,
But the thing is, you have to do it. Your accountant, bookkeeper can't do it. It has
right.
to come from the company owner. And I guess
Yes.
it's just another layer of disclosure. Sometimes some of us don't want to add more, but it's got to get done. Got
Yeah,
to.
because where it comes from is money laundering, right? So what they're saying is, look, if you're legit, you're gonna have to tell us who actually owns this stuff. It's from the Department of Treasury, right? Like Treasury just like prints money. Like, well, what are they doing here? And now they made a rule, and we all got to live with it, and they can enforce it through the IRS. And this stuff goes on.
Mm,
Remember which which government was in place. Like they came up with this, and Treasury said, yeah, we need to do this, and this is the solution that we're going to come up with. So now, if you create a new company next year, right, you got to fill out four more things, right? Because it's not just, oh, what's my bank account, and let me put this in, let me register with the state, let me get an EIN, let me do this. Like it's now on the list. So it's things that people will have to get used to, but it does shift, and that's what is important to know if you're running something because there's risk and you need to pay attention to it.
mm. What, with the minutes that we have left here, what other things that we can identify in terms of cybersecurity within a company?
I mean, a lot of people are doing things, I would call it like there's when they say penetration testing, pen testing, there's a range to that. And so I think people need to be more informed because it basically starts with what we call a vulnerability assessment. So it's just like a script that runs and it says, oh, can I log into this thing? Did you forget to change the password here? Or is this port number open? Or so it can kind of do those things.
Oh, yeah.
And you need to do that. If you've got, two computers in your company, you do it because you want to pay attention.
Well, did
Um,
I might have shared with you in the past, but the port open, that's my surprise, where I got a new modem from the cable company.
yeah,
They left the firewall open. I had
yeah,
no idea. I
yeah.
just assumed they deliver it with everything locked down.
They're
Then
used. Yeah.
out of my printer, I started getting messages that that we're going to attack your sensitive information, cryptocurrency, send it here, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it was dot matrix printed off of my computer, so it was very kind of cryptic looking, but this like evil looking figure.
Yeah.
And then I took it and I did a reverse image search online and found
Yeah.
others had posted it in the Netherlands and all of that. I was like, how is this even happening? So
Right.
I looked a little bit deeper and I called up the cable company uh, and they said, no, no, it's not on. We thought you wanted it that way. I'm like, why would I shut off the firewall? Side note, big side note, for
Mm.
most of these companies, and this is, for modems that you bring in if you're not working with an IT person like yourself, you can't control anything. I logged into the dashboard. Let me check. Let
Well,
me make sure it's on. Everything. I can't even shut off my Wi-Fi because a
right.
friend of mine is very health conscious, and he's like, "Yeah, if you're sitting there all day and you're not using Wi-Fi, I'm not. We're hardwired. You might want to shut that off during the day because I can touch it. It's that close." So I go into the dashboard. Let me just shut the Wi-Fi off, and then I could turn it on when I need it. Nope, you got to call the cable company. They shut it off. So I can't even do it on a regular basis. They got you, and those if you're using the stock material, equipment from those companies.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, one of the potential benefits of things with the cloud is they will bring more of these better practices to play. But, right now, Azure and AWS, the two big ones, right? They're forcing everybody to do multi-factor, right? So for the longest time, you didn't have to do multi-factor on your core admin account. And so they're making you do it because you know how often they get hacked? A lot. And the problem that they're like, well, all right, this is what we're going to do on all of these key accounts for people. We're going to make you do this baseline, right? And so one thing that I typically recommend to like organizations or managers is I like to use another type of service for like SMS, right? So if somebody knows my cell phone, I don't use my cell phone for my bank account. I don't use my cell phone for different things. I will use a different kind of service that I can get a text message on so that it's connected to some kind of phone number, but I don't tell anybody what that is because it's a point of risk, right? If they're going to break in to my cell phone, you know, what are they going to do? They're going to try and get they're going to try to break into the bank, and then they're going to
Oh
try and
my
get
gosh.
the
You
code.
think about it, everything is connected. I make a deposit to the bank. What am I using? My cell phone. Everything is there. Now, there are biometrics, you use your thumb to uh, get into the app, but at the same time, like you said, we don't realize in this day and age how we have the web that we've created of all the information that's out there. Um, it's mind blowing. We're just about out of time.
Right.
We could just keep going forever on this.
Well, I'll say the other core thing that I don't think anybody's really surprised with is, look, security and productivity, they're on opposite sides of this thing, right? So you can be really productive, but you got a whole lot of holes in your system, right? You can be really secure, but nothing's going to get done. And so you constantly, as a manager, have to evaluate what are we going to do? Because it's a really important thing in hospitals or in doctors or whatever. Like, if it takes the doctor 12 things and got to put his thumb on all this stuff in order to get something done, are we helping the patient? You know, yeah,
Right.
we're super secure, but are we helping?
Yeah.
And so it's a constant balance that, you're always going to have a trade-off on it, but you got to pay attention
Mm.
because everybody's like, oh, yeah, let's do this, let's do that. And then they wonder why doctors are quitting. Like, well, look what you're making them do.
Funny you should say that because my primary care physician, way back, I'm talking like 20 something years ago. Yeah, right around there, 21. When electronic records came in, didn't want to do it. He's like, he was
Right.
fighting it. I don't even know if he still practices. He left that practice because he said, no, I'll write it down. We're all good. I just want to focus on my patient instead of all of this typing. And so yes, to your point, it's a very delicate balance, technology versus care when it comes to healthcare. But that's what you do in terms of security, automation, making things easier, making things clearer, making things more secure. Best way to reach you, we go to the website, businessautomationexperts.com.
That works pretty well. Yeah.
Yep. And don't worry, it's locked down. There's no issues.
But
Like,
it's not on my systems. It's another company that I use, and
yeah.
there's an SSL, so you can't even use it unsecurely.
Yep.
But yeah, we do think about those things, but even we could delve into quite a few pieces in there. The last thing I'll say is, look, know your insurance, because every company, like, they get insurance. And so you really need to know what you have, because usually that's what happens. Like, bad stuff happens, and then they don't know. They call the insurance company like, well, that's not covered because you didn't check this box, or you didn't answer this question, or you
Right.
didn't, and so a lot of the higher up folks in hospitals or whatever, they talk about how getting cyber insurance, it used to be a 12-minute conversation, and it's like days now because they have to spend a lot of time to
Mm.
try and answer the questions. And is this right? And what's that? And what are we doing?
Wow. Thank you for all the information and also the reminder on whatever that form is. I got to take care of that.
The PO.
Yeah. I would have honestly totally forgot about it. And that applies to everybody with a business. So important. Again, appreciate it. And we'll catch up next time, Matt.
Great. Take
We'll
care.
be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.